second thing is like more onto the topic. So there's a big thing in plural spaces about fate claiming, and I feel very strongly about it. It goes into the region of like social justice for me, because I see it in a lot of spaces, not just the plural community, but like the concept, the driving force behind it, that I see a lot. I see it in a lot of spaces of marginalised communities, and a lot of the time what I see happening is that people who have experienced a lot of oppression can sometimes internalise the sort of like socially normative expectations. Like, for instance, you have people with internalized ableism who are also disabled, but they've spent so long being discriminated against that they've kind of internalized that narrative. So things like if they've been told they're lazy all of the time and they have chronic fatigue, you might see people going around who are disabled and have chronic fatigue then telling people, you can't lie down, you can't rest, no, we've just got to get past it. That's internalized ableism, and it's because people have lived in this oppressive society with this discrimination around them, and their brain protectively has sort of repeated it to themselves. That's probably what their internal dialogue tells them about themselves. It's beliefs that are going unchallenged, thoughts that are probably unmanaged within themselves, and then they perpetuate that back onto other people. And we see it a lot in a lot of society. It happens within queer spaces, it happens within disabled spaces, like I just said. You can have it with sexism, racism, you have it with anything. So I see it a lot in the plural community, and this is what I have come to understand happens when somebody usually is fate claiming. Usually what's happened is that at some point they've internalized this oppressive narrative about what can and can't happen. Their brain has thought, in order to be safe and avoid that discrimination myself, I have to perpetuate that narrative onto other people. It's not a conscious decision a lot of the time. It's just the brain having this trauma response and going, that's unsafe, I have to stop it because it's unsafe. And then they see somebody doing the behaviour that their brain has come to predict discrimination from them doing, and it goes, you have to mask, you have to stop, danger. And then they go, you can't do that. It doesn't mean the behaviour is okay. It's just the protective function that usually is underlying that behaviour. So there's a lot of complicated discourse around things like this, and it's difficult to have it really because, you know, there's a temptation to try and say things in a way that's like neatly wrapped, and it doesn't work like that because, you know, things are so different for different individuals. There's not a lot of broad sweeping statements that really you can accurately make. What I can say is that I don't believe anyone can diagnose somebody from any number of videos on the internet, and I don't believe that it would be ethical, accurate, or efficient to try. And I believe everyone who is qualified and has studied for a long time, who is good at their profession, that I have seen speaking in a way that I feel they have competency, says a similar thing. So there's that. Then on top of that, I would say things like, there's not a lot of black and white. So like when you're looking at diagnostic criteria, it's not just about having a symptom. It's about like how reliably repeated that symptom is, its level of impact on daily life, and also how many other symptoms in the same diagnostic criteria you're going to see in people alongside it, to what level, to what extremity, you know, like there's an entire pattern we're looking at, not just one thing in isolation. So there's that. So then, when, you know how the brain makes judgments and categorizes, it does that again. That's a protective response. Like, so much of what happens is protection. So it's trying to put information into a category really quickly because it thinks it needs to do things with urgency to keep us safe. So if it can define what it's looking at and put it into a box, it means we can respond quickly, which means we can limit the threat's impact. That's what the brain thinks it's doing, you know? So if something's particularly going to be a trigger, it makes sense that the brain like really quickly tries to categorize what it's seeing and go, this is that. And it can be quite rigid about it if trauma's involved, especially. So a lot of the time I think that's why we see people who maybe are part of the community and do have DID or OSDD, but who are saying, oh, you don't have DID if you X, Y, or Z, which is not something realistically we can say. I'd like to reference the McLean video, which was a massive medical betrayal. They absolutely did not behave within their duty of care. It was a huge oversight. There were many problems with that video, why they had to remove it. There's also the backlash was significant, and rightfully so, because what they did was they took snippets of behaviour of people who have DID and they said these are the behaviours you'd see in people who don't have DID. Bearing in mind the systems that they primarily took these from were diagnosed. That's a whole other conversation. Diagnostic model has flaws as well. It's not the end all. But let's just say, you know, even by their own standards, there was a really problematic thing to do. So there's that.